Now, we have some very special guests in the chambers tonight. Being Black History Month, it's especially a big honor to have members of the 369 Veterans Association here. Please give them a round of applause. Some information has been left on your desk of one of their most proudest veterans and one of their colleagues from a long time ago, Sergeant Henry Johnson, Medal of Honor recipient. So please look it over tonight. It's a story worth reading, one of Albany's greatest heroes. So we're proud to have his colleagues in the future generation here with us tonight. I should be cross with you guys because I interviewed for a position at 369 a couple weeks ago. I didn't get the job, but here we are. So it's my honor to call Mr. Dandles up to lead us in the pledge.
Stand, face flag.
The flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Could the clerk call the roll, please?
Beston. Here. Olin. Here. Miller. Here. Blake. Monahan. Here. Rouse. Cunningham. Dawson. Here. Malowitz. Drake. Here. Feeny. Klein. Grimm. Here. Hogan. Here. Andrew Joyce. No. Arjoyce. Lecott. Lockhart. Morrell. Mayo. Exide. Lane. Mendick. Miller. O'Brien. Slotson. Reinhardt. Sigarachi. Simpson. Smith. Stevens. Jay. Tunney. Ward. Willington. 36.
Please take note of additional sponsors. You should have that list on your desk. I'd like to take a motion to take Resolution 75 out of order. Please read Resolution 75.
Confirming the appointment of the Commissioner of the Department of Aging.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. Congratulations. On the previous business, Resolution 509.
Authorizing the conveyance of 1031 Broadway in the City of Albany.
Mr. Higgins?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe this is under the desk. I ask that the waiting be read. I'd like to be heard.
Please read Mr. Higgins' amendment.
Resolved by the Albany County Legislature that Resolution 509 for 2017 is hereby amended as follows. After the first resolved clause add, resolved that any revenue in this transaction in excess of the total 2018 budget gain on sales tax acquired property now be designated for use by the county legislature for future expenses, and be it further resolved that any amount in this transaction in excess of the total 2018 budget gain on sales tax acquired property account be transferred to the A 1990, sub 44999, contingent account.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just really quick to address the underlying amendment, and I'm going to address the underlying bill, which I've had concerns about whether it's published. What this amendment will do is send $68,616 to the contingency fund out of the total sale of this property, interest, penalties, and fees of $472,101.63. Of that amount, that would satisfy the outstanding taxes that are owed to the county. It would also cover $150,000 that the executive has, that's in our fiscal plan, that the executive has appropriated this year's budget. The remaining amount is above and beyond what we budgeted already. $2 million is the windfall county as a result of this individual not paying his taxes. I had initially wanted to use this money as an appropriation to the land bank, however, speaking to some of my attorney colleagues, I think there's some folks that have some other great ideas about how we can best utilize this money to benefit the residents and taxpayers in the county. Some members are very interested in using the money for economic development. Other members are interested in looking at affordable housing programs. I think at this time, what's appropriate thing to do is put the money into the contingency account, allow those members to bring their ideas forward to this body, and then, in the next several months, we collectively can vote on how we want to appropriate this money and use it down the road for initiatives that the legislature seems fit. So that's the underlying amendment, what this amendment will do. On the actual resolution, this is a resolution on a large piece of property in Albany. I was fortunate enough to attend a meeting at the county executive's office facilitated between myself, their staff, and the owner and his attorney. Basically, the layout, my understanding of this transaction is that if we are not to sell this property back to the previous owner, he's going to go to federal bankruptcy. And there's a 2-year look-back provision that would allow the judge to claw the property back to him, and he would take possession back. So that's the real issue here. I have been assured by the attorney that there are plans for this development in that particular area and city of Albany. And they're in motion, and they involve another very large piece of property that was recently purchased in advance. So, we are a little tied here on what we can and cannot do. I know the executive is very interested. The money is here, it's in a check, and have it, and he's very interested in keeping this money for the property. So, after the meetings and the amendment and everything else, I'll be supporting it, and I hope my colleagues will.
Mr. Flanagan?
Mr. Chair, it's a brief question for Mr. Higgins. I was a little bit unclear on how extra revenue beyond the initial will be generated. Was the revenue projected in last year in the amendment included in this year's budget? And you're saying anything in excess of that will go to this contingency?
The executive in the budget that we voted on in December includes future revenues based on foreclosed properties. This amount, above and beyond the $150,000, was not part of that financial plan. So it's not money that he or we contemplated that we would receive now. I don't know if that answers your question.
How do we anticipate extra revenue could be generated from this?
What do you mean, in the future? On the property? The longer we
For your
hold-
resident.
What? Well, this is, if we accept the amendment and we vote on the property, we have to check, we can cash it, and that'll be that. If we sit on it, it'll continue to accrue penalties, fees, and interest, which the future owner, whoever it is, will then accept.
But if you do your amendment with the resolution, the deal is done on the revenue transfers, the property transfers to the
We're gonna take the taxes that were owed on it, that'll be satisfied. Then we're gonna take some of the money that's in the financial plan of the county budget, that will be satisfied. The third piece of it, which then will be $16,000 going to contingency, to come up with how we're gonna spend it. I wanted to spend it on the land bank, but there were others who thought differently.
Okay, understood, thank you.
Mr. Kraus?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Higgins, if you wouldn't mind, just a question, clarification. Under normal circumstances, when a property such as this would be in this situation, wouldn't it normally flow through the land bank?
Well, I think it would. The problem with this particular property, as described to me by the executive staff and the attorney for the previous owner, is that there might be some environmental remediation that is necessary based on the past use of the property. And our concern is that if we were to take it, we would then be liable, the county would be liable for any remediation and cleanup of the property. And so that, I think, is one of the biggest concerns. I think in the future, moving forward, what we should do is really take a holistic, and I think that's the plan, about our disposition policy, updating that to kind of reflect some of these circumstances and situations we're planning in the future.
Under normal circumstances, if revenue would come to us in this manner, where would it normally go to? Would it just go to the general fund?
I believe so. I mean, this is one of the biggest properties we've dealt with. I don't think we've
So,
sold anything.
in this particular case, we are saying we want to designate it to go to a certain spot, to the contingency
A
fund.
portion will go to the appropriated amount in the budget,
Right.
a portion will satisfy the taxes, and the third portion, the smallest portion, will go into the contingency.
And when it goes into the contingency fund, it would just stay there, or?
Well, until we come up with ideas on how we're going to spend it. Like I said, I wanted to spend it, my personal preference was a straight up appropriation to the land bank. However, when I was talking about this, some of my colleagues said, well, I have an idea on how to spend the money, and I have an idea on how to spend the money, so we came up with an idea, let's set it aside for now. Allow those people to come up with those ideas, move into the committee process, and when the time is right, then we as a legislature as a whole, we're going to appropriate the money to wherever those programs are. And I said that was a happy, compromising meeting note.
Thank you, Mr. Higgins. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Draper.
Mr. Higgins, just another question. Is there precedent to allocating profits on real estate disposition?
To be honest, I'm not sure. That's a great question.
I was just curious on that. I understand that the amount has come down from what the original idea was. But I think we'll ask a question about, well, how are we going to have additional money? I think Mr. Clenihan is just that. Between the numbers that we're working off of our November numbers for interest and penalties due, when they close, they're going to be responsible for the balance of the benefit. Interest and penalties accrues until the time of closing. But, and again, it's a vote by this body that would authorize the use of these funds.
That's my intention of it, absolutely, to move it out. We would have to have a resolution to do that.
And that would go to the same contingency fund that we have now?
Yes, that's that. There's a lot of good ideas, I think, that we're talking about now, these new months, economic development, affordable. There's a variety of things that people have interest in, and I think, when you decide there, it's not a lot of money, it's free. If it were a taxpayer dollar, I'd have a major problem with it, but it's not. And I think that's one of the key differences between the money.
So, but couldn't it be construed that the taxpayer had an investment in this property and that this is the taxpayer's money in terms of the excess?
Well, we're making it, that's whole, that's being made whole.
Well, yes and no.
Ultimately, the money will be spent, whether in the general fund, and the executive spends it in the manner he sees fit, or we move it to contingency, and the legislature, as the policy-making body of the county government, spends it the way they see fit. It's going to be spent no matter what.
Well, is that necessarily true? What if we were putting a contingency fund, the long-term savings fund?
That's an option. If a member comes up with an idea to sweep the money out of contingency as part of the budget at the end of the year to give a property tax reduction, that would be the prerogative of the members who sit.
Now, is there a time frame set upon the use of these funds?
No.
So we don't have to make a decision as a legislature anytime soon. This money could sit out there indefinitely.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that that's necessarily in the interest of the taxpayers either. That there should be maybe a suggestion here that there should be a time frame in place.
I would imagine it's going to all kind of get wrapped. If it's not, appropriated by the time the budget comes around, I can see the county executive, part of this fund, his executive budget telling us how he's going to spend that money. So, to me, I think that, in my head, that's their money. I'm the board, but as I develop things on how I think we could, pass some good programs.
Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Gutierrez.
Just roll call vote.
Chairman, has this already been cited by the New York State for a brownfield site or Superfund site? Does it have a number already from the state of New York?
I don't
It
know.
hasn't been cited yet? Has it been cited?
I don't have any answer.
Mr. Kraus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just, again, Mr. Higgins, for clarification, you're talking about putting this money into the legislative contingency fund, not into the county's contingency fund or the county's reserve fund, right? You're saying this is going to be something that the legislature now plays with.
It's gonna go into the contingency fund. I mean,
It's going into the legislature's contingency fund, correct?
I think, because we work off a line item, the budget, it's just a number. You are using the word legislative contingency fund. I don't believe,
Well, then why don't we just put it into the reserve fund that we are building in this county so we can make sure that when bad times come, the legislature, the county doesn't have to raise taxes instead of putting it into a fund that we'll decide to play with sometime.
you know what? That's a great idea. It's just not my idea. At the end of the day,
Not that you don't have great ideas.
At the end of the day, several years ago, I had grand ideas and plans on how we could spend the casino money that this county receives. However, that money was put into the tax stabilization fund, and nobody in this body got any idea on how we could use it in the future. I put a resolution in on how to spend that money. So we have a recurring stream of revenue from the casino in Schenectady that we're already earmarking over $1 million each year for stabilization on top of the $61 million. I don't think we're talking, it's a nominal amount of money. But to your point, certainly you could, that's one idea. You could do that.
Mr. Grimm.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I may ask some questions of the sponsor, Mr. Higgins. You've said there's a number of potential uses for this money. Clearly, there are. Isn't that making the case then to review this through the committee process where we have a chance to air out those differences and let the committees, the finance, take a good look at it?
I don't disagree with that. The issue being that basically we have this arbitrary, it's not arbitrary. What I was told is that if you don't do something, that this guy's going to say, forget it. I'm just going to go to bankruptcy court. And I'm going to take it back and you're not going to get any fees, interest, or penalties on the money. So it's basically, we're in this, I don't want to say we're in this situation now where, if we send it back to committee,
No. We're not blocking the sale. We're saying we're going to get the money from the sale. But what you're saying is let's use a piece of that money for this particular item. And I say let's refer that to committee so we can debate what's the best use of that money.
well, you're going to get an opportunity, but we need to appropriate the money first,
The committee will move the money out of finance anyway, so it doesn't matter.
which I now say.
That's right, but she now said, so both you guys are gonna decide where it's going anyway.
Well, that was kind of the goal, the intent behind the whole thing, is just set it aside for now, and we'll come up with some ideas later. Unless you guys want to say.
Mr. Bergdorf?
Just a question,
Yeah.
Mr. Higgins. If we were to move it to this contingency account, would it with absolute certainty take a full vote of this legislature to allocate those funds, whether it be to economic development or environmental remediation or whatever? It's not like the CAB board could go in and say, you have money in a contingency.
Only the members of the finance committee can move out funds, transfers funds in the budget.
To your point, Mr. Bergdorf,
But you're wrong.
I will say
And all
this.
three of you guys are on it, you guys can work it out.
Trying to get some things on the record.
I would not have anything to
Ms. Willingham. Deputy Chair.
Review this property at 1031 Broadway. First of all, it was over $200,000 in back taxes, and it was over $200,000 in interest that the county has actually gained on this piece of property. From what I understand, we should have never took control of the property to begin with, because of all of the things that were actually discussed here that we really don't know anything about, okay? But those are some of the reasons that we really should. But because we did, we are simply now trying to get our money back, and the money back for the taxpayers too. So right now, we're voting on the amendment and what we're going to do with the excess, we'll call it right now, because you all haven't made up your minds on what you want to call it, whether it's legislative, contingency, and so forth. I don't know which one you believe right now, or what it's really called, so I'm just going to call it. excess right now, okay? I do believe that we definitely need to vote in favor of this resolution, and also, I'm in favor of the amendment. Thank you.
Yeah, folks, I'm not going to advocate for one thing or the other. You'll know how I feel about this when I vote. But my thoughts on this initially is that one of our members did a lot of legwork on this initially, did a lot of good work. So if there is excess that we can have or collect or however you want to put it, we should do that. But let's come up with ideas of how we can best use it in the future. It's going to take a vote of this body and how we do it. It's going to take everybody's input. And it will remain there until we decide the best course of action for it. But I thought Chris did a good job on this, and it was one of his ideas, and any one of you do put your best foot forward, we should do our best to support you. So, long roll call vote on the amendment, please.
Veston.
No.
Bullock.
Yes.
Bergdorf.
Yes.
Chapman.
Yes.
Clay.
No.
Monahan.
Yes.
Camiso.
No.
Kraus.
No.
Cunningham.
Yes.
Dawson.
Yes.
Tomolowitz.
Yes.
Drake.
Yes.
Yes.
Ethier. Feeney.
Yes.
Klein.
Yes.
Grimm.
Yes.
Higgins.
Yes.
Hogan.
No.
Andrew Joyce.
Yes.
Greg.
Yes.
Lukakis.
Yes.
Lockhart.
No.
Mariello.
Yes.
Mayo.
Yes.
McKnight.
No.
McLean Lane.
Yes.
Miller.
No.
O'Brien.
Yes.
Pulaski.
Yes.
Reinhardt.
Yes.
Signorachi.
No.
Simpson.
No.
Smith.
Yes.
Stevens.
Yes.
Touche.
Yes.
Honey.
No.
Willingham.
Yes.
Looks like 26 to 11.
Amendment passes. Resolution 509. As amended. All those in favor of Resolution 509? Aye. Those opposed?
No.
Long roll call, please.
Shirley. Veston.
Yes.
Bullock. Bergdorf.
Yes.
Chapman. Clay. Monahan.
Yes.
Camiso.
Yes.
Kraus.
No.
Cunningham.
Yes.
Dawson.
Yes.
Tomolowitz.
Yes.
Drake.
Yes.
Ethier. Feeney.
Yes.
Klein.
Yes.
Grimm.
Yes.
Higgins. Hogan.
Yes.
Andrew. Joyce.
Yes.
Reagan Joyce. Lukakis.
Yes.
Lockhart.
Yes.
Mariello.
Yes.
Mayo. Knight. McLean Lane.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
O'Brien.
Yes.
Pulaski.
Yes.
Reinhardt.
Yes.
Signorachi.
No.
Simpson.
No.
Thank you. Smith.
Yes.
Stevens.
Yes.
Touche.
Yes.
Honey.
Yes.
Willingham.
Yes.
34 to 3.
Resolution passes.
Passed.
On the current business, Resolution 9.
Authorizing the submission of grant application to the New York State Victims Office of Victim Services regarding the Victim and Witness Assistance Grant.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes.
Authorizing the submission of grant application to the New York State Office of Indigent and Legal Services regarding distribution of non-competitive grant allocation.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes.
Number 11, authorizing submission of grant application to the New York State Office of Indigent Legal Services regarding distribution of the number 8 non-competitive grant allocation.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. 12.
Authorizing agreement of the New York State Division of Criminal Justice Services regarding the aid to defense program.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. 13, please.
Authorizing agreement with the American Rock Salt LLC regarding the purchase of road salt for the county. Roll of snow and ice for the state of Connecticut.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. 14, please.
Authorizing supplemental agreement number 2 in the New York State Department of Transportation regarding County Route 55 over the Mullenville Bridge rehabilitation project in the town of Bethlehem.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Number 15, please.
Authorizing an agreement with International Dioxide Inc. regarding the purchase and delivery of hydrogen sulfide water control oxygen for sewage dewater, water purification district.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Number 16, please.
Amending Resolution 19, 2017 regarding multiple arc incinerator repairs in North Plains water purification district.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Passes. Number 17, please.
Authorizing agreement with Renee Building Contractors Inc. for general construction services regarding renovations of the luxury suites in the Leah Lounge.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Number 18, please.
Authorizing agreement with Hostler and Nickel Corp. for mechanical construction services regarding renovations of the luxury suites and Leah Lounge at the Slam Union Center.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Number 19, please.
Authorizing agreement with J. McBain Inc. for electrical construction services regarding renovations of the luxury suites and Leah Lounge at the Times Union Center.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Number 20, please.
Authorizing agreements regarding the expanded in-home services for the elderly program.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Number 21, please.
Authorizing agreement with New York State Industries for the disabled regarding ancillary laundry services for eligible individuals in the ASAP program.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Number 22, please.
Authorizing agreement with Trinity Alliance and Capital Region Inc. regarding provision for family and neighborhood resource center family purposes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Number 23, please.
Authorizing agreement with Berkshire Farms and Family Center regarding non-secured pension services.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Number 24, please.
Authorizing agreements regarding the Capital Region Behavioral Health Care Collaboration.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Number 25, please.
Amended Resolution 227 for 2017 regarding reimbursement for the administrative costs pertaining to the children's study of health care needs.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Number 26, please.
Authorizing agreements regarding the Children's Advocacy Center, amending the 2018 Department of Children, Youth, and Families budget.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Number 27, please.
Authorizing acceptance of grant funding and arrangements with the New York State Office for the Aging and Departments for the Aging and Social Services regarding the Central Assessment Unit for the provision of home-delivered meals and adult daycare services.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Number 28, please.
Authorizing an agreement with Peter Young Industries regarding the provision of home-delivered meals for seniors.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. 29, please.
Authorizing agreement with Senior Projects for Rivian regarding the provision of home-delivered meals for seniors.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Number 30, please.
Authorizing an agreement with Senior Services of Albany regarding provision for home-delivered meals for seniors.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Number 31, please.
Authorizing an agreement with Colony Senior Service Centers regarding the provision for congregate meal services for seniors.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Number 32, please.
Authorizing an agreement for Senior Projects for VNAP regarding the provision for meal services for seniors.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Number 33, please.
Authorizing an agreement with Senior Services of Albany regarding the provision for congregate meal services for seniors.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Number 34, please.
Authorizing agreements regarding long-term care point of entry services.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Number 35, please.
Authorizing agreements with the Albany County Department of Social Services, New York State Office for the Aging regarding New York Connect expansion and enhancement programs.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Number 36, please.
Authorizing an agreement with New York State Office of the Aging regarding senior community service employment.
All those in favor? Opposed? Passes. Number 37, please.
Authorizing an agreement with New York State Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation regarding snowmobile trail development grant and amending the 2018 Department of Economic Development and Conservation Plan.
All those in favor? Opposed? Passes. Number 38, please.
Authorizing an agreement with Schenectady County Community College regarding a health worker intern program.
All those in favor? Opposed? Passes. Number 39, please.
Amending Resolution 316 for 2015 with the New York State Department of Health regarding a Healthy Neighborhoods Program.
All those in favor? Opposed? Passes. Number 40, please.
Authorizing an agreement regarding electronic medical health record services.
All those in favor? Opposed? Passes. Number 41, please.
Authorizing agreements with the town of Bern, Scotland, Rensselaerville, Westerlo, and the Delmar Bethlehem Volunteer Ambulance Service regarding emergency medical technician defibrillation services.
All those in favor? Opposed? Passes. Number 42, please.
Authorizing agreements with various municipalities regarding participation in the advanced life support service.
All those in favor? Opposed? Passes. 43, please.
Authorizing the submission of a grant application with the New York State Division of Criminal Justice Services regarding video recording, statements, and equipment.
All those in favor? Opposed? Passes. 44, please.
Authorizing Albany County to negotiate with the City of Albany regarding submission of a grant application for shared dispatch services with the New York State Department of State.
All those in favor? Opposed? Passes. 45, please.
Supporting the Albany County Clerk's Office collective bargaining agreement, CSEA Local 1000, Albany County Clerk's Office bargaining unit, and amending the 2018 Albany County budget.
Mr. Feeney.
Can you put me on 45 to 49?
Mr. Graham.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make the point that I made during the Finance Committee. Oftentimes when we say these contracts are 2% increases, that applies only to the cost of living increase. That there are other raises in all of these agencies that actually add to the actual cost of what the average increase is. And the media, frankly, gets this wrong often. So what I'd like to ask all the agencies is to be prepared to give the actual number, what the actual percentage increase is for the raises. That is, how much we're spending on raises divided by the number of employees. That would be helpful information. Thank you.
All those in favor? Opposed? Passes. 46, please.
Approving the Albany County Sheriff's Office collective bargaining agreement with CSA Local 1000, Albany County Sheriff's Office telecommunications agreement, and amending the 2018 Sheriff's Office.
All those in favor? Opposed? Passes. 47, please.
Approving the Albany County Sheriff's Office collective bargaining agreement with Teamsters Local 294, Albany County Sheriff's Office Law Enforcement Supervisory Unit, and amending the 2018 Albany County budget.
All those in favor? Opposed? Passes. 48, please.
Approving Department of Probation collective bargaining agreement with CSBA Local 1000 General Services Unit, amending the 2018 budget.
All those in favor? Opposed? Passes. 49, please.
Approving the Department of Probation collective bargaining agreement with Public Employees Federation AFL-CIO, Division 502, and amending the 2018 Albany County budget.
All those in favor? Opposed? Passes. 50, please.
Amending the 2018 Albany County budget, creating an hourly interim director of real property tax services.
All those in favor? Opposed? Passes. 51, please.
Amending 2018 Sheriff's Office budget to create a deputy sheriff and 2 superintendent positions in Sullivan County.
All those in favor? Opposed? Passes. 52, please.
Authorizing submission and acceptance of grant funding and to enter into an agreement regarding the state and municipal facility program and amending 2018 Sheriff's Office budget.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. 53, please.
Amending 2018 Sheriff's Office Budget Vehicle Salvage Fund.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. 54, please.
Amending 2018 Residential Healthcare Facilities Budget Administrative Adjustments.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. For 55, please.
Authorizing acceptance of donated office furniture from workstation consultants to the Albany Planning Commission.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. For 56, please.
Authorizing agreements regarding mental health services and amending 2018 Department of Mental Health Budget.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Number 57, please.
Amending Resolution 454 of 2017 with the Addiction Care Center of Albany regarding substance abuse and narcotics addiction, residential and prevention services, and amending the 2018 Department of Mental Health budget.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. For 58, please.
Authorizing an agreement with the Community Foundation for the Greater Capital Region regarding the treatment and management of kidney disease and amending the 2018 Department of Health budget.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. For 59, please.
Amending Resolution 448 of 2017 regarding the local impact grant amending the 2018 Department of Health budget.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. 60, please.
Authorizing submission of grant application and agreement with the National Association of County and City Health Officials regarding the Million Hearts Program amending the 2018 Department of Health budget.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. For 61, please.
Authorizing an agreement with Better Health Northeast New York regarding the cardiovascular health management project and amending the 2018 Department of Health budget.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Number 62, please.
Amending Resolution 230 for 2015 regarding an agreement with the Health Center Network of New York for hypertension and diabetes control services and amending the 2018 Department of Health budget.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. 63, please.
Amending Resolution 398 for 2017 regarding non-residential domestic violence services and amending 2018 Department of Social Services budget.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. For 64, please.
Amending 2018 Water Purification District budget administrative adjustments.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. For 65, please.
Amending 2018 Water Purification District budget NYSERDA grant funding.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Cole.
On this, it allows $50,000 funding from NYSERDA to a regional biosolids handling facility. And this is what we were talking about with an anaerobic digester at our presentation, our PowerPoint presentation in the caucus room last week. It's a really important resolution. It starts a process where we should go into a facility that is a composting facility at the North Sewer Plant, along with this biosolids handling facility. And it's really important in terms of revenue sources for the county. This produces biofuels, and biofuels able to power, something like our fleet in the Sheriff's Department or other uses in the county. And a composting, which is also a revenue stream. So it's really important. The study will be out this week. There'll probably be an RFP next month, I'm told, so I'm urging a yes vote on this. Thank you.
Stevens?
Just know my abstention, I'll give one.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Number 66, please.
Amending 2018 Soil Water Conservation District budget.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. 67, please.
Authorizing an agreement with the New York State Governor's Traffic Safety Committee regarding the Highway Safety Grant Program and amending the 2018 Department of Public Works budget.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. For 68, please.
Authorizing an agreement with Nelson A. Rockefeller Institute of Government regarding New York State's required countywide shared services property taxes.
Mr. Grimm.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just would like to shed some light on this. I mentioned it that Finance Committee had voted to pass it to the floor, but I think the members should be a little bit more aware about this. We contracted with the Rockefeller Institute, $75,000 contract for them to study shared services. Now, according to staff research, there were 34 counties that were engaged in these shared services. Only 2 contracted with an outside vendor, one in Rensselaer County and one in Albany County. Now, one of the conclusions apparently of this study is that we should spend $100,000 more to help implement the study. Well, this, of course, to the same vendor, Rockefeller Institute. So, first of all, the $75,000 was a bit of lift to begin with. Now we're proposing committing $100,000 for them to study the study, basically. I'm sure there's some value to the work, but this legislature is about making choices because we have a finite budget. And the reality is I've been on the health committee where in 3 instances the state is cutting money for public health, including tuberculosis testing. And that we're prepared tonight to spend another $100,000 after $75,000 that we spent on the study. That is not my idea of essential spending, and I'm opposed to this measure. Thank you.
Mr. Kraus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know Mr. Grimm has done some work on this, and I would just like to question him. Mr. Grimm, I believe there are 38 counties that have participated in this shared services. Have any of the other counties, to your knowledge, engaged anyone such as we are?
Well, that's what I mentioned. Only 2 have contracted for services, just Rensselaer and Albany.
That's it.
And Rensselaer was for engineering services, and Albany was, obviously for the full study. And now we're asking for $100,000 more with the same vendor, which I think is particularly troubling to me.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Jamalowitz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I understand what Mr. Grimm is talking about, but Rockefeller College, the people on that board, they wrote the legislation for the state, and we have working for us in guiding us forward in these shared services. We had the best performance, the best program in the whole state, much better than Rensselaer County. And the reason why we do is because we have the best doing it. People who wrote the whole program for the state. So I think it's money well invested for the future of Albany County. It will save us millions of dollars in the future of Albany County, and I hope we also support it. Thank you,
Mr. Drake.
I'm not so certain the state's an exemplary role model of efficiency. But with that said, there is a lot of talent that works for Albany County, in all the departments that we have. I know there's been some new hires in the controller's office, a couple of things, right? Aren't there some talented workers here in Albany County? Well, I might direct this to Mr. DeVos, who seems to know a lot about the Rockefeller Institute. Aren't there some qualified folks in Albany County who can implement the study now that it's been presented?
I think for what we're doing, I think we're hiring the best, and we should stay with the best.
So, I find it telling that we're the only ones hiring someone to implement the study after being one of 2 who hired someone to do the study. And I just can't imagine that all the great employees we have here in Albany County couldn't do this efficiently and with the salaries already in place. And I share Mr. Grimm's feeling that when we're talking about cutting programs for youth, the elderly, the sick, and we're going to spend $100,000 to study a study, as Mr. Grimm put it, I have to say I have to vote no on it. Thank you.
Ms. Cunningham.
Just a point of clarification, the backup material indicated $50,000 expenditure. It's a 2-year contract, but it's $50,000. It's not a $100,000 this calendar.
It's $100,000 total.
It's $50,000 each year.
But your comment confused me, and I thought maybe others were confused. It's $50,000 per year.
Mr. Reinhardt.
Yeah. First of all, I think the Rockefeller Center and some of the individuals involved there really have been studying this issue across the state. They've been learning what other places have been doing, what works, what doesn't. I think this is a good investment in their expertise. I did participate in the meeting that we had at the Bethlehem Town Hall where the Rockefeller folks showed up. I thought they did an excellent job. They obviously demonstrated their knowledge of you know, the concepts, the principles, the practices, the successes and non-successes of these kinds of efforts, are not only around New York, but around the country. So I think we're buying good experience here. And I would also like to make the point, if we spend this money and if we get the best work product, what does that mean? That means we are going to save more money. We're going to save money in how we implement this program, the kinds of strategies that we use. So to me, this is an investment in efficiency, and it's going to pay dividends down the road. So I'm supportive.
Mr. Bergdorf?
I am not familiar with the form of our contract, but when we enter into a 2-year contract, $50,000 per year, do we have the discretion at the end of the first year not to continue for the second year? Because one of the things that I'm concerned about is at the Audit and Finance Committee meeting, right at the very end, somebody asked a representative of the county executive's office, what have we seen so far in savings? And the answer was 0 so far from this study. So it's one thing to say we need to spend $100,000 over 2 years, but in a two-year contract, wouldn't we expect to have some performance measures, or say, here are our goals for year 1, and here's how you can tell we're doing a good job. This is the type of dollar value that you can expect that we're going to get, because I would hate to see us enter into a 2-year contract and then find at the end of next year, when we come back to the Finance Committee for an update, somebody says, well, the issues are elusive, and we have to go into another year or 2. Does anybody know if we have the ability to inject a renewal or an option for the county not to renew or to come back to the legislature for the second year?
Mr. Drake?
I asked a question.
So it's a rhetorical pause.
I thought so.
I don't think so. I think this is more.
Or is it just a 2-year automatic renewal?
Mr. McLean Lane?
Thank you for recognizing me, Mr. Chair. I don't have the answer to Mr. Bergdorf's question. I personally don't sit on the Audit and Finance Committee. I would assume that having gone through there, that it would have been reviewed there. One of the things about government is that it is very hard sometimes to make decisions by government to relieve itself of some of the services it has amassed and has not consolidated. To have an outside entity make those decisions for you sometimes can take the hard decisions away from you, and it can be helpful. I am supportive of the Rockefeller Institute doing this work for us. They have done a fine job so far. Of course, it remains to be seen what will happen going forward. I think I'm going to support this, especially considering it came to Audit and Finance. Thank you very much.
Mr. Drake?
Thank you. I didn't actually get to see. So, if I've got mold in my house, and I hire a mold assessor to come in and review it, and he or she does a phenomenal job of identifying the mold spores, generally I don't hire that same reviewer to clean it off. So this is sort of an example for me of the type of decisions that we need to start looking at carefully as a government, because Mrs. McLean makes a great point. They've done an excellent job of identifying some hard decisions that need to be made, but that's what they're here to do. They were here to make those recommendations to us. My point, and I think some other people's point out there, is why aren't we capable of internally making those decisions, implementing those decisions and moving forward, and why are we tying ourselves to a 2-year contract with someone who recommended that we have a 2-year contract with us? So that's the point I want to make, and thank you.
Mr. Dawson?
I think the state has a program to incentivize counties to come up with shared services savings programs, right? So you don't have to be in the state program to do it. We could go ahead and do it on our own. In fact, we have done some of that probably. But in order to be in this program, we now implement those savings that have been identified, then we get a state match for those savings. So that's the incentive.
So why do we need the Rockefeller Institute to do it?
Well, I mean, people doing their everyday jobs don't sometimes have time to step back and take a look at what the big picture is. And to work with different, and so you bring in experts who can deal with bringing different people with different interests together and saying, here's something you have in common. You can share this service and save money. They had no idea. Yeah, should we, if we had really good managers in the county that we paid money to, maybe, yeah, some of that would happen. Absent that, we bring in people from outside, this is what their job is, this is their expertise, they identify the savings, and now we can save millions according to the program. Albany County has been identified by the state as one of the leaders in the state in coming up with these initiatives. And hopefully, we'll be able to follow through and realize the savings, and then we're going to collect a state match. So, yeah, there's upfront costs, but we're going to more than make it back down the road. And now, our employees are being trained to think about this stuff because they're involved with these experts, and now that maybe they will be able to do this on their own in the future. This is just a program from the state to get it started, and now we need to pick up the ball and run with it ourselves. Whether there's a state match or not, doesn't matter.
Well, and I agree with what you're saying, except naively, I had the assumption that the executive and the department commissioners and managers would get together and look at these recommendations and say, well, how can we implement them as a management team? So, that's where perhaps we have a disconnect.
I don't disagree with that.
That would be, that they would be capable, and because they're well picked and from a wide variety of applicants to do the job, I think they're capable.
I think they've probably been doing these things, over the years, but now we have a state program to put the spotlight on this, and in order to play that, the way they set up the game, you bring in the experts and you apply them for the funds. So I'm not saying we weren't doing it to begin with. I'm not saying we're not going to continue to do it. But some of this stuff is hard. You want to get your municipal volunteer fire companies together to consolidate, to share services? I mean, we already do to a certain extent. One company will run a ladder, another hazmat, whatever. But to actually consolidate those municipalities with their own tax authority, very difficult to do. Sometimes the people who are most involved in doing it are the ones who are least able to bring about those changes. That's just a fact of life in the administration.
Thank you.
Mr. Clean Lane.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know how many in this room have actually read these plans. I read them for Albany County, and I also read them for Schenectady County, and gave a request to read some from there. And I'm looking forward to reading them as well. For those of us that have read it, these are not perfunctory acts that can just be done by a commissioner. Some of them involve state legislation. In my other capacity, I actually did make a request to the county executive's office to ask for any of these items. They did send a letter and to find out what items are possible and are not legislatively at the state level. But these aren't just things that we can just say, there we go, our Department of Aging is now doing this. They take a little bit more than that. And I, for one, am going to support the Rockefeller Institute, who's told us that they can help us achieve some of these very lofty goals, but goals that hopefully with some of their expertise and guidance that we can achieve. Thank you very much.
Mr. Bergdorf.
I don't want to belabor the point of the multi-year contract, but having sat on the Social Services Committee, we've had scores and scores of 2- and 3-year contracts and 5-year contracts where every year they've had to come back through the Social Service Committee and be reauthorized again for year 2. So it appears there is some precedent for breaking this into a 2-part appropriation. And I wonder, is it possible for us to, I would feel much more comfortable knowing that we get another look before we spend $50,000 and we see where we are in a year, that we have a contract that has the ability to add a second year. I don't know if council who would like to opine on that.
Mr. Ethier?
Yes, it was a very enlightening conversation. But based on a lot of ifs, I personally cannot support it. Spend $100,000 of taxpayers' money on a lot of ifs. And that's how I feel. And ask for long, roll call, please.
Mr. Bergdorf, hopefully with the unique structure we have with these committees now, we can answer some of these questions. Good questions that are being asked tonight. But we'll do a long roll call on 68. Mr. Paul.
I think it's important that we take a look at that. We could do this internally, and I think as history shows we can. And we have to go outside on this. And, you know, I see the 911 shared services with the city of Albany and the county of Albany as a real big step forward. And that took a long time. And, you know, you don't do that internally. I think a study like this is really important. I support the study, and I think we need more shared services and start implementing over the resistance that we have internally.
Long roll call, please.
Beston.
In favor.
Bullock.
Yes.
Bergdorf.
No.
Chapman. Clay. I'm sorry?
Yes.
Thank you. Monahan.
No.
Camisco.
Yes.
Kraus.
No.
Cunningham.
Yes.
Dawson.
Yes.
Tomolowitz.
Yes.
Drake.
No.
Ethier.
No.
Feeney.
No.
Fine.
Yes.
Grimm.
No.
Higgins.
Aye.
Hogan.
Yes.
Andrew Joyce.
Yes.
Raymond Joyce. Lekakis.
Yes.
Lockhart.
No.
Moriello.
No.
Mayo.
Yes.
McKnight.
Yes.
McLean Lane.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
O'Brien.
Yes.
Pulaski.
Yes.
Reinhardt.
Yes.
Signorachi.
Yes.
Simpson.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Stevens.
No.
Touche.
Yes.
Honey? No.
Willingham.
Yes.
Thank you. Looks like 26 to 11 pass.
Number 69, please.
Amending the 2018 Albany County budget, administrative adjustments.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. 70, please.
Authorizing cancellation, chargeback, refund paid under protest real estate taxes that are unenforceable or unexally assessed and levied on real property known as 80 Cedar Lane, the town of Knox.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. 71, please.
Authorizing cancellation and chargeback of unenforceable delinquent real property tax lien for 21 Clinton Avenue within the city hall.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 72, please.
Authorizing the levy on the city of Bo's property, the amount needed for various purposes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. 74, please.
73, amount levied for unpaid water and sewer charges in the city of Bo.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Number 74, please.
Amount levied for other charges in the city of Bo.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. 76, please.
Appointment of members of the Albany County Ethics Commission.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Number 77.
Requesting the Commissioner of the Department of Management and Budget to conduct a feasibility study regarding the cost of electronic devices for use by the Albany County Legislature.
Send that to Audit and Finance, please. Number 78, please.
Public hearing proposal for law 80 for 2018.
All those, Ms. Cunningham.
Can you add
78, please.
78, public hearing, proposed local law 8, 28.
Isn't that the law and health, please? Number 79.
Requiring contractors and subcontractors from Albany County construction projects of $100,000 or more to provide apprenticeship training programs.
Please send that to law and audit and finance, please.
Thank you.
Number 80, please.
Reappointment of Director of the Albany County Business Development Corporation.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Number 81.
Amending the 2018 Albany County budget, miscellaneous expenses.
All those in favor? Mr. Higgins.
I just have a really quick question, Mr. Bonner. Is the goal of this resolution to get iPads to the members so you don't have to carry all this paper?
Yes, and what we've done is we went ahead, we restarted this project back in the fall of last year. So at this point in time, we put a stop to what we're doing until Mark and the Ladies Committee catches up to us. So yes, at this point, this is just taking care of what we've expended so far. That's what we're putting away until now.
This is a great idea. We do this in the Senate, there's no excuse we shouldn't do it here. It's obscene how much paper we're asked to carry around, half of which doesn't get this
Look at
stuff.
all I have on my desk here. Thank you for your input, Mr. Higgins.
So just a quick question.
Mr. Signoracci?
Individual resolution went in, is not going to committee, we're just gonna wind up voting on it? Just for a point of clarification, we're not sending it to committee? I mean, they've already made the expense and now we're doing the follow-up, wouldn't they do the appropriation first
Correct.
prior to the expense?
Correct.
But they should do the appropriation prior to the expense, right?
Are you asking me a question you already know
I guess
the answer to?
it was rhetorical.
Rhetorical, okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Mr. Miller?
Opposed because I feel that we should be doing it for the whole legislature if we do want to nation.
Long roll call, please. 81.
81? Is that right? Long roll call?
Yes, please.
On 81, amending the 2018 Albany County budget. Resolution 81, long roll call. Mr. Besta.
No.
Burke.
Yes.
Bullock.
Yes.
Chapman. Clay. I'm sorry.
No.
Thank you. Monahan.
Yes.
Comissa. Kraus.
Yes.
Cunningham.
Yes.
Dawson.
Yes.
Malowitz.
Yes.
Drake.
Yes.
Ethier.
No.
Feeney.
Yes.
Fine.
Yes.
Grimm.
Yes.
Higgins. Logan.
Yes.
Andrew Joyce.
Yes.
Raymond Joyce. McCarthy.
Yes.
Lockhart.
Yes.
L'Oreal.
Yes.
Mayo.
Yes.
McKnight.
No.
McLean Lane.
Yes.
Miller.
No.
O'Brien.
Yes.
Lotsky.
Yes.
Reinhardt.
Yes.
Signorati.
No.
Simpson. Smith.
Yes.
Stevens.
Yes.
Touche. Tony.
Yes.
Willingham. Willingham. Looks like 29 to 8.
Passes.
Correct.
82, please.
Designating February 2018 as African American History Month in Albany County.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. The local laws.
Local law 8, 2018, a local law of the County of Albany, New York, prohibiting the sale of tobacco and other nicotine delivery products at pharmacies in the County of Albany, New York.
Please send that to law and health, please. Mr. Kamales.
Chairman, I invoke Rule 11.
The second? Second. O'Brien, second. Higgins. You want to read Rule 11?
Does everybody have one on their desk?
The resolution number.
We don't have one. Resolution
83.
Whereas the Albany County Legislature has requested administrative adjustments to 2018 budget to reflect changes caused by the nature and scope of the work assigned to the staff. Whereas the chairman indicated that the requested budget amendments are necessary to implement a reorganization of the administrative structure of the legislative staff. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Albany County Legislature that the 2018 Albany County Legislative budget be amended.
Mr. Ethier.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise to speak against this, and I really believe it's abuse of our Rule 11. For years, I've heard our colleagues on the Republican side saying voting has to be emergency, and I think it does have to be emergency. In this situation, I don't think it's emergency. Based on the fact that, we got I believe like 24 to 25 staff, political appointments in our legislative office. And we spent almost $1 million to $200,000 on salaries, another $1 million maybe on benefits, and that's a lot of money. And I have no problem reorganizing it and stuff like that. It's done what I believe would be the right way with all of us being involved. That'd be a nice way of doing it. But just to take and use a Rule 11 to push something through that could be done, next week, 2 months from now, a month. It's not an urgent thing. This does not help the taxpayers. People are going to be paying a bill. It's all about helping us as legislators. We have a big staff of 22. They work hard. I'm not disputing all that stuff. I'm disputing the amount of money that we've grown to come to. And we're spending $1,200,000 in taxpayers' money. And there'll be no benefit out of it. It's benefit us. And maybe a little bit of benefit goes their way. But it isn't like the DPW hiring a bunch of people and whatever, and we question, they're out there doing stuff for the public. This is not doing nothing for the public, it's doing stuff for us. And maybe we do need a reorganization among ourselves, but it should be done by everybody, not just our leadership, which unfortunately they have to make that decision. But we should have some input. I feel very strong about that. And I'm not opposed to the jobs we have, but I'm opposed to stuff like when you create jobs, like $115,000 for chief of staff. I'm not saying we don't need chief. I'm just saying when you create 10 things, and you create another lawyer for $104,000. We got 5 lawyers working our staffs now. There's a lot of brains in there, a lot of jobs, there's a lot of stuff there. Well, it should be more input from everybody, not just the leadership. And to rush into this thing at this time, I don't think it's the right thing to do for taxpayers, because they get no service out of this. It's only service for us. And I can't understand why anyone here would be opposed to wait a little while, meet in our groups, do what you got, talk about these, we're deleting jobs, we're deleting money, and to say it's all neutral, well, yeah, it's neutral, but you take the money from jobs that we never filled. So shame on us, we got 4 analysts, whatever these titles are, and we didn't fill them. Well, if you don't use them, give the money back to the people. It's their money, it ain't our money, it's our money to pay taxpayers. But overall, we're going to pay people. And I don't really believe that should be done. And then we're going to advertise big jobs like this, paying us high salaries. Now, there's high salaries in there now, but them salaries were accumulated through the years by these people working there. When you're going to bring people in at $115,000, $104,000, and the public who's going to pay the bill don't even get a chance to apply for these jobs, that is very dangerous. If we're going to spend their money, they should have some input. They tell us whatever. Now it's nothing. It's just the leadership doing it. And I understand why we reorganize. Our chairman, the Republican chairman, you all want to get together and do this stuff. That's great. But include everybody in this thing. Just don't come at the last minute and give us delete this, delete that, do this, do that. What the hell? This is serious business. They pay $1,200,000 of people in salaries now, plus $1 million in benefits. And now we're going to create jobs. Which maybe we need these jobs. Let's as a group discuss these jobs. That's how I feel about it. And does this go to the personnel committee? Who's in charge of the personnel committee? Did you give any information about this stuff?
We're gonna vote on this Rule 11 tonight. Mr. O'Brien?
No, wait, I'm not, excuse me, I'm done.
The chair recognizes Mr. O'Brien.
Well, before the chair recognizes him, I'm gonna ask the personnel, have they seen this? Have anybody seen this?
Roll call, Mr. Chairman.
Hold on.
Oh. Anyway, it isn't that I'm opposed to these people, I'm opposed to the process you're doing it, and we should have input from us, and I think the
Mr.
public
Signorati.
demands that.
Rule 11 from our rules. Rule 11 should be typed where timely passage is of the essence. I see no hurry on this. But for a couple of other reasons, I just want to point things out. Voting on this tonight lacks transparency. Did not wind up going to audit and finance, did not wind up going to personnel. And to wind up ducktailing on one of Mr. Grimm's comments earlier about a percentage, we have an increase from a $15,000 line item for an attorney to $106,000. That's 700%, I believe. So, I mean, if it's going to be written in the paper, they should wind up having a 700% increase for one position. Two, if these jobs wind up going through affirmative action, that's one of the things that, whether they do or whether they don't, did anybody else have a chance to wind up hiring for them? Number three, we're taking $47,000 away from the temp helpline. And I'm going to wind up saying that in the years when I actually worked in the chairman's office, when we actually created an internship program, I believe that's where we actually paid those out of. And I believe that Mr. Demolowitz wound up getting money. Well, it's a different line item, but I believe that we paid out of the temp help last year. And if we wound up paying out of the temp help last year, those were jobs that wound up going to Lucy's, Mertz, Wanda's, Norma's, their districts. That's cutting by 25% because there were about 70 jobs taking a third out. So that's one of the other things. So if we're not utilizing it, I'd like to know whether or not that money is going for the internship program. And also, too, this resolution that is before us has several defaults, so I would like it to be turned back to committee because it's improper, and I would like it duly noted, so it's insufficient, so it shouldn't be voted on just because of that.
Ms. Cunningham.
Just a couple of thoughts.
Yep. To me or to him?
No, not for you. You can.
Okay, well, I'm not done yet.
Okay, well.
So-
Chair recognizes Ms. Cunningham. Thank you, Your Honor.
You know, the district attorney's office presented us with a rejiggering of their staff to better meet the needs of that office. It was a budget neutral change, but, you know, the district attorney had taken a look at what would work for his office. This Rule 11 isn't that. It is the leadership of the new chairman and the leadership and the majority leader's office sitting down with a group of us. And yeah, there wasn't every person in the legislature that was involved, but it was a work group of the two leaders that were elected by this body and then the Democratic caucus to sit down with a team of people to think creatively about a new vision about how to meet the needs of either the caucus or the new chair's office. A lot of work went into it. It wasn't done in the dark of night. It was done on a lot of weekends, soliciting input. We talked a lot in the caucus and with a lot of members about new ideas and what people wanted. So I don't want this to be representative, some collection of, you know, sort of dark of night kinds of things. This was a very, very good faith effort that was looking at taking the positions that we had, vacant lines, people that left, and putting together a vision of how to meet the needs of this chamber under the vision of Andrew, who was elected by this body to do a job, and in the majority leader's office, under Gary's vision and leadership for that office. So at this point, we now have kind of the action plan right here. This is sort of the action plan in terms of the staffing. And this, if executed, will then fulfill the vision of both Andrew and Gary. It's nothing more than that. There's nothing nefarious. There's nothing hidden. It is quite simply a reorganization with a new vision and a new emphasis in mind. That's all it is.
We're going to vote on getting this on the agenda. We can debate the merits of the Rule 11 once we get it on the agenda. Long roll call, please, on the Rule 11.
Wait a minute, hold on. What are you doing? Whoa.
If there's people that have to you have your time.
Roll call,
It's
please.
on Rule 11, that's all.
You're gonna get to debate the whole thing.
You'll have time.
This is just on whether we have to take it up or not.
Dictatorship. shift here all of a sudden? I noticed bipartisan, we're all together. We got a select few people in this room, we got a select few things.
Mr. Joyce,
She's got a rule in, that's all.
just for clarification, are we voting to have it
We got a
added to
selected
the
group
agenda?
doing things now. Selectors vote on the Rule 11, we didn't vote on the Rule 11.
Right, but just to put it on the agenda?
No.
So what are we?
Oh, yeah, we're talking about it now.
We're voting to put it on the agenda, yes.
Well,
Mr. Peston.
Yes.
Mr. Bullock.
Yes.
Mr. Bergdorf.
Yes.
Yes,
Ms. Chapman.
that's the way to put it, yeah.
Clay. No. Lenahan. Abyssal. Kraus.
Yes.
Cunningham.
Yes.
Dawson.
Yes.
Tomallowitz.
Yes.
Drake.
Yes.
Ethier.
No.
Feeney.
No.
Fine.
Yes.
Grimm.
Yes.
Higgins. Hogan.
Yes.
Andrew Joyce.
Yes.
Raymond Joyce. Ms. Licata.
Yes.
Lockhart.
Yes.
Morial.
Yes.
Mayo.
Yes.
McKnight. Queen Lane.
Yes.
Miller.
No.
O'Brien.
Yes.
Blonsky.
Yes.
Reinhardt. Signorati.
No.
Simpson.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Stevens.
Yes.
Boucher.
Yes.
Honey.
Yes.
Willingham.
Yes.
Looks like 30-7.
Rule 11. Rule 11 passes. Mr. O'Brien,
Entertain a motion to vote on.
motion to vote second.
Second.
Mr. Tomallowitz.
I just want to be heard.
Mr. Siguraji.
Can I be heard?
Yes, please.
Okay, so, Thursday when we have caucus, and I asked a question about everything coming up with the changes, the chair, right before he said that he signed a letter with the Republicans for all of this wonderful stuff that he wound up doing. He wound up, he said that it's forthwith coming, and then he winds up putting the Rule 11 on our desk today. He should actually recuse himself because it is actually his, but it is his. And seeing as we asked to put it back in committee, he's the one that has the sole right whether to move it back or not. So you should have recused yourself on that. My own personal opinion. How's
Mr.
it going?
Higgins.
You know, I understand all the back and forth, but at the end of the day.
Oh, you had one back and forth in the last 6 years? Okay.
I read the right longer than you, Mr. Signorati.
I was a staffer.
What does that have to do with
Nothing.
it?
I watched you back and forth. All I'm saying.
At the end of the day, he was duly elected as the chairman. And within our caucus, Mr. Tomallowitz was duly elected as the majority leader. It is their prerogative now to select the folks that they want to surround themselves with.
I get you.
That's it. It's
not
called
worthy.
politics.
It's not
But you're
really
doing
the worthy
this- It sounds
letter.
like sour grapes.
It's not. It's not.
Let them hire the people they want. You
Hire
know how
them.
much the council was paid here? $115,000.
It's not worthy of the Rule 11.
We're not getting into the back and forth now. Mr. Higgins.
We're on the merits of the bill now.
It's
That's what this is.
Mr. Higgins, any closing?
The merits of the bill. You know, we had a council here who was paid $120,000. I didn't say because I was the majority leader, I was the chairman. It wasn't my prerogative to hire those people because they were not my staffers. End of story.
Ms. McLean-Lane.
Thank you for recognizing me, Mr. Chairman. I am voting, obviously, in the affirmative on this. I will remember a time not too long ago, under previous leadership, in which I had a Rule 11 that was completely shut down. And the meeting was closed before I was even able to present it. So I'm thankful that we do have leadership in place that does allow Rule 11s to be put forth, and that our body can vote on them, and it is an up or down vote. I thank you for your time. Again, I'll be voting in the affirmative.
Mr. Kraus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't think there's anything nefarious going on here. I do disagree with Mrs. Cunningham's portrayal of this being similar to other things. I worry about the process. I certainly think that any new leadership should have the right to choose who they would like to fill in positions, and even to suggest that positions should be increased and certain other ones should be decreased or eliminated. But I think it's important that that process
be followed, and that it should go through a committee structure, and that it should be reviewed. And who knows, I'm not even saying I disagree with the numbers here, but I disagree with the process. And I think with the new leadership taking over, the last thing anyone would want is a story about how it appears as though this was strong-armed through the legislature. That's just not a good way to start. And so I would recommend, in good faith, that this be sent to committee, reviewed, and I have a feeling it would probably be reported out, but at least it would give people the opportunity to have a voice and discuss it. And I know that some folks do discuss it, but in almost everything we do here, it goes through a process. And yet, this didn't go through a process other than the regular Rule 11. And I know some would argue that that's process enough. But I think I would be more comfortable, Mr. Chairman, if that was sent back to committee so that people could have an opportunity to act upon it through that process. I think it would also show that this is all out in the open. Here it is, instead of many of us just seeing it tonight. And again, I'm not even saying I disagree with what you're trying to do or even the numbers, but I think we need to follow the process. And that's what I would recommend.
Mr. Demowitz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise in support of the resolution. What we tried to do here is to make our offices run more efficiently and to provide more services to my members and our caucus with the changes that we made in our office. And what that'll do for our members is that they'll have more access to a person who's going to help them with their constituents. They'll navigate the problems of a constituent trying to get services from Albany County, maybe social services or health department or whatever. So this is going to be important to our members to help them do that. And to have the two resolutions and proclamations just like the Republicans have now. That we have 7 people in our office. Republicans got 3. We really should have 9. We're too short. So, you know, we've cut back and we reduced our staff, but we got a staff that's going to run great and do what we need to get our office done more efficiently than ever before. And as we move into the 21st century, so that we can put Wi-Fi in this room, we don't have Wi-Fi in this room. We have been working on that with Mr. Grimm, trying to get Wi-Fi right here. We're going to get, eventually we're going to have tablets for everybody too. I know some will be kicking and screaming, they don't want them, but it's coming. And, you know, this is the direction that we're moving. And to do that, you got to have good, bright people. The chairman hired 2 people that are be outstanding and bring a lot of effort and visions that we need. So I look forward to working with everybody. This isn't nothing about hiding anything. And we're right out in the open here tonight debating it. Everybody knows where every penny's coming from. Our most important thing that we thought about is the taxpayer, making sure that this is budget neutral. And this is budget neutral. And it was a lot of hard work to make that happen. So, Mr. Chairman, I hope we have support of everyone here tonight, although it doesn't sound like it, but I look forward to the vote. Thank you.
In terms of invoking Rule 11, just kind of an overarching theme, something I've been thinking about over the past month, in the first 30 days. Nothing is more important than a smooth and effective transition. And we need the folks we've deemed appropriate to be in these right positions to help us with this. This is not about me, this is about all of us. I pitched a vision that is very members focused and will give us the capability to reach out into our districts and do things that we have never done before. And this is the way that we started. This is the framework for that change that I wanted for this body. It's going to change. There's a number of things that we're going to look at. We're going to have to constantly look at this plan to make sure that it's working, and we're going to make it work with your input. So, I'd like to have a long roll call on Resolution 83, please.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes. Mr. Graham, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, things have changed, and I think the new regime, the new leadership, it's their prerogative to pick their people. I feel strongly about that, and I've been involved in management my whole life. Where I do have a concern is I believe this legislature spends too much money on itself. The number is $3.7 billion.
Thank you.
But the old group did too. So, you say it's what, you know, a lot of people were complaining about Rule 11, they weren't so complaining 3 months ago. I agree with Rule 11.
I'm starting to like you.
So I think speed is of the issue. You need to put your staff together. We got to get rolling here. We got a lot of things we want to do. We had an important vote about the new direction, and I support the new direction. And Mr. Joyce, Chairman Joyce, you've done a good job so far in leading us in that direction in a bipartisan fashion. I also think you should pick your folks. But, you know, we say it's budget neutral. It is this year, but next year it won't be because we're eliminating stuff that isn't staff. So the same staff is going to increase expenditures by $100,000 next year. So I have a concern. 3.7 million is too much for the old regime, and 3.7 million is too much for the new regime. At the same time, I think you ought to have the flexibility. So I'm really torn, to be quite honest, on this vote. Thank you for your attention.
Mr. Drain.
Well, just one point of clarification, just Mr. DeMalos mentioned the staff in the minority conference office. It's actually 1 full-time and 3 part-time people. So I think that the ratio is okay.
Which is not changing.
Which is not changing. It has nothing to do with any of this. But I just want to echo Mr. Grimm's comments that certainly this is a fight. You know, this is about staffing your house. That's nothing that I can object to. But one thing that was disappointing, just to be candid on record, is that it wasn't a reduction in cost. And I can tell that next year there's going to be an increase in cost if it isn't addressed in the budgetary process. So I'll be looking forward to how that's addressed at that time when this passes. Thank you.
Mr. Eater.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I started off speaking about I wasn't procedures when I've been president. And they mentioned to you, 39 years here, never once was asked by any leaders in this majority about a position to hire somebody. It was always done by them. And through the years, I've always complained about how high salaries in the county. So your speeches are required when you talk to me. I never had one person hired. I still don't. I want to get involved in it. And I have no problem with the legislature chairman and the majority leader doing their thing too. The problem I have, and I just find out, was done by a select few. That disturbs me. That disturbs me.
What was your vote on the Congress pay raises in the Congress office?
I don't recall right now. I don't recall. I can find out. I recall standing on this floor telling my president he should be appointing county officials and county commissioners at $100,000. I was opposed to that back then. But this is us they're working for. So I think we all should have something to put on it. Not just our leadership, but a select few people. Why can't we all sit down? This select few met, and they realized we have 4 lawyers now on our staff. 4 lawyers. What are we doing wrong? We need 4 lawyers. 4 lawyers on our staff. This selected few didn't see that. They turn around, bring them on for $104,000. Now, I'm not questioning these 2 people at all. I'm questioning how we did this thing. It doesn't make any sense. No sense at all. Why? And I'm going to start questioning. Yes, we elected you guys as our leaders, but I haven't seen no rules to say where you can do the things you're doing. We've got to change some rules that don't even exist now. Who's saying?
So they made you co-chair rules reform, Gil.
I know, and I'm on it. Thank you.
All right.
I'm working on it. But all kidding aside, that's the way it is. We should get together and build this organization for the future. And I still insist, I don't think it's an emergency. It has to be done right now. We can do this 2 months from now. Get more input for everybody. Let's go forward. Let's do this. But to do it right now is cause an emergency. It doesn't benefit the taxpayers at all. It doesn't make no sense. Now I'm voting against it.
Mr. Signorachi.
Last thing I'm just going to say. Whoever the chairman wants to pick, that's on him. That's all his power that he has. But on the resolution, if you look at item number 2, delete and decrease line. Delete and decrease line. You're going to decrease it by $41,335 out of a line of $45,900. You have a balance of $4,000. You can't delete a line if there's still a balance. You've done that 3 times on this resolution. That's why I say that this resolution is an error. Because on the 2 more down, delete and decrease line for the senior policy analyst for $19,176 with an annual salary of $19,726. You leave a balance of $550. And the one underneath that, you leave a balance of $9,505. So my reason to say that this should go back to committee is because if you're deleting a line, you can't leave a balance. I could be wrong, and if I apologize if I'm mistaken, but you can't delete a line in legal balance.
Thank you. All long roll call on 83, please.
Destin.
In favor.
Bullock.
Yes.
Bergdorf.
Yes.
Chapman. Clay.
Well, I had my hand up to speak, but, Mr. Chairman, before you do the wrong, may I just have a word, please?
Speak on, please.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to support this with a lot of reservations. I think we should have had this before tonight. I have no idea what all some of this stuff is. I would have appreciated at least an advance notice, and certainly you had the opportunity. My caucus met in your office. If you were doing this, it seems to me you would have notified us if you were doing this.
The work was ongoing at that point, Bob, I assure you, but keep going, I'm sorry.
But I'm going to support it with a great deal of reservations. I don't like the way this was done, but I'm going to vote in favor of it because I agree you should have the right, to, as you have done, to organize your staff as you see fit. But please be advised, I'm opposed to it.
A yes or a no?
That's a yes, Bill?
No.
It's a no.
Yes.
Thank you. Monahan.
Yes.
Commissioner. Kraus.
Mr. Chairman, just to explain my vote, I do agree you have the perfect right to do what you're doing. My argument against this is about process, not about content. And that's why I have to vote no on this, but it's about process.
Thank you.
No.
Cunningham.
Yes.
Thank you. Dawson.
Yes.
Demalowitz.
Yes.
Drake.
Yes.
Itzker.
No.
Feeney.
No.
Fine. Grimm.
Yes.
Higgins.
Aye.
Hogan.
Yes.
Andrew.
Yes.
Raymond Choice.
Yes.
Lekakis.
Yes.
Lockhart.
Yes.
Moriello.
Yes.
Mayo.
Yes.
Paxton.
Holding my nose, saying yes.
McLean Lane.
Yes.
Miller.
I'm voting no because of the same reason that Mr. Sigarachi mentioned about the deleting of lines and the technicality.
Thank you. O'Brien.
Yes.
Plotsky.
Yes.
Reinhardt.
Yes.
Sigarachi.
No.
Simpson.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Stevens.
Yes.
Touche. I didn't hear you. Tony.
Yes.
Willingham.
Yes.
It's like 31 to 6. Yes.
Resolution 83 passes. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion adjourned.
Good night, everybody, thank you.